start. So the case basically describes Green, who was rapidly promoted and then partially criticized by his boss.
I think your audio is cutting in and out, Matt.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, that's better. That's better.
So Green and his boss are disagreeing on work styles and market projections, and Green believes that the sales goals set by his boss are based on creative accounting and grossly overstated. And a mood of silent conflict develops quickly between Green and his boss, and Green is concerned that his boss is building a case to fire him. Green's situation is one in which his failure to adapt his work style and fully understand the demands and boundaries of his new position may lead to his discharge. So basically, him and his boss are not getting along very well at this point. And you can tell after their disagreement that his boss is like finding every little thing and saying he's lazy, saying he's not doing his job, and just really trying to get at him. So the first thing it wants us to do is what are the key issues in this case, it asks. To me, I see the biggest key issue, and this is one thing I wrote in my case study analysis, is being stubborn. I think both of them are just being a little stubborn, and neither one of them is willing to be eye to eye. They're not willing to agree to disagree. They're just like, I mean, Green was pretty bold at the company meeting and spared no expense in letting his opinions be known. And his boss, right after that, got really upset and has been noticing all sorts of flaws afterwards, and as opposed to before. So I think it's just kind of petty, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think the problem started before that, when Green's friends promote him, and I think Green came to the company with an idea that because he knows the boss, he can do whatever he wants.
Yeah,
it's true. I think it was also.
Oh yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Michaela.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think overall there's a lack of communication within their workplace. With, you know, it talks about Green not really talking to McDonald afterward, and just the fact that Green isn't communicating even with Davis as much. Like, he tries to avoid him, and that, you know, might have been, I know it mentioned like because he said something at the meeting, but at the same time, I also think Green probably could have addressed that in a different manner, like done it in a more private situation instead of during a meeting with your new boss.
Right? Yeah. I think another point too was that he went in and just blatantly didn't do reports, they didn't know where to find him, different things like that. And of course there's always room to look to change things, but I think you also need to at least try what they're doing first, see how it works, so then you can see where maybe things could be made more effective instead of just not doing it because you think it's stupid.
So do you guys think they should have hired him in the first place? Like, if you were Shannon McDonald, would you have hired him on the screen?
I don't think so. I think that he should have put in a different position before giving that higher position. It could be higher for the company, but not for the position that he was in now. Especially because he thinks he knows all that, and in reality he doesn't, because it seems that he doesn't have a broader knowledge of the company as well as the others.
Yeah.
I think he could have succeeded in the job if they gave him more training as well on the job. Like, if they integrated him, you know, not as like bluntly throwing him in, but instead slowly letting him, you know, shadow people and learn it. Because like it said in that meeting where he remarked on Davis's stuff, that was like his first meeting like that. So he had never experienced this, but, you know, they could have done a little bit better if they wanted to hire him for the position. Then they needed to start with, you know, integrating him into the system, so it wasn't just like, okay, here's your job, like, there you go.
Yeah. They
Yeah.
knew he didn't have any management training either, and
Mhm.
it doesn't seem like they've done a whole lot to support that or try to train in that either. So
Well,
more
I don't know. I
training in
think the
that way.
apple doesn't fall very far from the tree in this situation. I don't know how great of management training any of these people have, because they wouldn't be hiring like this if they did. And like I said, they're just kind of petty. One of the quotes is from Green is he's like, I can't shake this nagging suspicion that Frank's criticism on my performance are a direct result of my questioning the validity of his forecast in the budget plan meeting. And like that right there, like I could totally see his boss saying the same thing, right? Like about I I just think it's this culture that they have of just kind of trying to get to the top, and everybody has to agree with them. You know, it's kind of very political, and so I don't know. I can't really blame Green too much. Like he's doing the best he can, and he's moved up too fast, but just acting like everybody else is. So I don't know.
It's a good point.
Mhm.
Is there any reason why we should keep him around, or why you would have hired him? Does he have any good attributes? I mean, I guess he's bold, right? Like he
Yeah.
isn't afraid to let his viewpoints be known and to challenge the status quo.
But I think he was also worried about his personal issues. Because in one of the trips that he had made to Atlanta, then he forgot or he didn't send any reports to the boss. And then when they asked him what happened, he started saying excuses about he didn't think that he needed to have them done, and that he was doing something else. And I think the way that he worked was more independent, and guess he didn't want no one to go and ask him what he does.
Yeah. So what about Frank Davis? What kind of a guy is Frank Davis?
I think he's the same as Green. I think they both had the same personality. That's what they don't like each other.
Okay.
It's true.
What do you think he's after? Like, what's his motivation?
I think he has. I'm trying to bring up the case real quick. I think he's like a hard worker. Like he wants, the best for the company. But I also think, it does talk about that he was supposed to hire that position, and I can see it from his viewpoint of, well, great. Like I just got thrown somebody that doesn't really know this job when I had somebody in mind, and I think he kind of he expects a lot from those who work with him. And he expects that they're dedicated to the job and that, they have a good open relationship and communication. And he had like that huge problem with Green left, what was it, like one of the places early and then like went to Atlanta or something. And I can totally see it from Davis's viewpoint of like, hey, like you didn't even tell us. I didn't even get the report. Like, so I think he just expects a lot out of his employees, and he expects quality.
Yeah. Was it just me, or did he not seem to expect quite as much until after Green disagreed with him in public?
Yeah, that was the
Yeah,
major shocking point.
Yeah.
It's almost like he had something to prove at that point by Green stepping up and saying that. And, of course, communication should be allowed in a meeting, or be allowed to, there's a time and a place of how to do it, of course, but, he shouldn't be reprimanded or, treated differently just because he does speak up.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess like if we were to describe what the different motivations between Thomas Green and Frank Davis are, Thomas Green's trying to promote himself and trying to move up through the company, and he might be a little brash about it. And then Frank Davis, I think, is just trying to keep up his appearance because he's in charge, he's the boss, and he doesn't want anybody to look down on him. I don't know. I think if you were to say who's most at fault for the situation, in my opinion, I would say it's more of a company problem. And that kind of comes from the top down because this is kind of the culture they've created. And Thomas Green and Frank Davis, in my opinion, would be just about the same in management. And so I don't know. They're both trying to look good. They both expect a lot, and they both are a little bit overreacting. And I think all it would really take is for one of them to just go to the other's office and be like, "Look, I appreciate what you said." Can you imagine how awesome that would be if Thomas Green went in Davis's office and was like, "Hey, I'm sorry. Like, I see where you're coming from, and I appreciate what you said. This is my point of view. We might disagree, but I'm still going to do a good job with your forecasts anyway." I think that'd be awesome. That would show a lot of confidence and a lot of faith that he's putting in his boss. And I think that's all that Green's looking for. But that's probably not going to happen because of, the pride that's here. What do you guys think? Who do you think is most at fault?
But also Green was talking behind the boss back. He was talking to the employees. So I believe that even Green wanted to put the boss as the bad guy instead of Green.
Yeah.
I agree. I think it's a culture thing, and I think both have things they could improve on or do differently. And, if they both maybe made some compromises and said, "Hey, I know you could do a good job with this," and Green is bringing in some different perspectives of what other things he's done in his past, and they could use those perspectives to make better changes or to do things if they would utilize that properly.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think it is just one person at fault. Like, I agree with, the company should have looked out a little bit more at, what they were doing hiring wise, but also just the relationships they're having with each other is what's causing all the issues. And it's just not one person's reaction, but both people's reaction.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
I think also, what's his name, the boss, I think he didn't like when people say something different than he thinks, because maybe the way he said it was an opinion, but I guess David was used to, like, whatever I say is what it is, instead of asking for others' opinion. And I think David was used to being the boss, and that's it. I mean, it looks like a first level management, not 5. Like, it's all about making a decision, and you just gotta follow through.
Yeah. Yeah, asks us what actions you would take if you were Thomas Green. I really liked one of you guys, I'm not exactly sure who it was, in one of the discussion boards was talking about how you have a company retreat every now and then. I don't know which one of you that was.
Yeah, that's what I do.
Oh yeah, and you said that like you guys make sure that you can trust each other, and like it's more of an outside of work thing, and if you can't trust your coworkers and you guys don't get along, then it's not going to work out. So you really try to get along with them. I think that's it says what actions did you take if you were Thomas Green. I think that's more of a company thing to do, but being in Thomas Green's shoes, I would definitely try to like befriend Davis and befriend others and just kind of, make it okay to have disagreements, because most times when you get along with people, it's okay to have disagreements, and you can, talk back and forth instead of it being this really offensive thing that you said that was against the other person. So I think that would be really important for them to just talk and maybe spend a little bit of time outside of work getting to know each other, understanding that, they both aren't necessarily just trying to, destroy the other one's career, because that's kind of what they think right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would definitely. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Go
No,
ahead. I was just going to say, I think it could be beneficial if, maybe the first couple of meetings or the first couple of times they meet, having like an HR mediator or someone there to kind of keep the conversation on track and keep what the real issues are there instead of people just, well, you did this or that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that Green kind of needs to put away his pride just a little bit so that the relationship can be mended. Because if he does go to him and they can resolve things, if he keeps being super stubborn about it or, you know, things like that, it's going to cause more issues where you almost have to be in like that situation of like, okay, is this the battle I want to fight? Like, or do I want to just, you know, take the high road and just kind of humble myself to the situation and then keep progressing in the company? Because it's all about kind of like picking your battles. Is this the one you're going to want to pick, especially that early on in a new job?
Yeah. So that's a good segue into this next section. It says, how does power and office politics come into play? So power and office politics, I think, mostly comes into play because in this situation, Davis wants to maintain power. Green wants to maintain his job, and maybe he's been promoted a lot, and he's looking for the next promotion. You know, he's looking to keep going. So he wants that same power, and office politics comes into play while we see Green talking behind Davis's back, and we see Davis all of a sudden, you know, focusing on all these faults in Green that he never saw before until Green disagreed with him. You know, I mean, that's definitely the sign of office politics right there. You guys have any other examples or thoughts about how power and office politics come into play?
I mean, I think you covered it really well. I think it's something that sometimes we don't want to think that it's always going to come into play. Like, we want to think that, you know, our boss isn't going to have to pull that card or something like that. But I think it's always just that, oh, what's the word? That lingering of like, okay, you can be friends with your boss, but at the end of the day, they're your boss. Like, you know, they're going to hold the card in that. Because, like, I worked for a company that one of my supervisors was one of my really close friends. I mean, we did a lot of things together outside the office, but in the end, in the office, she was my supervisor. And there were times that the power play kind of had to come into account. And I think it's just all about respecting that they're your supervisor and stuff and not making it like a personal thing in your life.
Yeah, and then if you abuse that power, then at the end, it could be an issue because maybe that friendship might end. And like it's happened on my job that the supervisor and employee were really good friends and went blah, blah, blah. But he will call out sick almost once a week. So in less than 7 months, he called out sick 20 times. And then HR interfered, and the friend couldn't do anything because you cannot be called out sick more than three times in less than 1 year, and he got fired. So I guess regardless that he was a friend, I mean she was the boss, and he knew that what he was doing, but he never thought that he was gonna get fired because she was her friend, his friend. So so now we have got to be careful if we're gonna cross that line of the friendship, or we're gonna go to what the boss says and follow the regulations from the company as well.
Yeah. So in this case breakdown, it gives us 4 different types of conflict styles. And the first one is competition, and it says that's characterized by aggressive and uncooperative behavior. The next is compromise, which is a type of conflict. And it says in compromise, a party gives something up to gain something. And then there's avoidance, which is another conflict style where you disassociate and ignore and discount real conflict. And there is collaboration, where you work together to find a common resolution. So I think that's kind of, the opposite of conflict right there. So competition, compromise, avoidance, and collaboration. So what do we see in Green and Davis? Do we see these styles, and which ones are the most prevalent?
I think combative a lot of times.
Hmm. So the competition.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I agree with that one.
I also noticed what I think would be avoidance in Davis. He's
Yeah.
avoiding what the real problem is, right? He is saying that, Green has all these other issues. Oh, it wasn't the fact he disagreed with me. No, it's all these other things, right? And it's really the fact that he disagreed with him and he didn't like it, which is super huge avoidance of the real issue. And it both really, I think, are kind of avoiding what the real issues are. So the question is, what do we do if we're in Green's shoes? What should he do to try and salvage his situation at work? What's the best thing he can do to salvage a situation at work and to salvage his relationship with his coworker? What would you guys do if you were in his shoes?
Well, we don't know if by apologizing it's gonna help the situation. Because it could be that now Green's afraid. What if he mess it up again? Because it seems that his character is really not the way that. I mean, he has a good character, but at the same time, I don't think he's a kind of person that is willing to say sorry. So instead of going apologizing, there might be another issue by arguing for something else. And I guess that's could be an issue that, regardless of the parties, there might be another issue because of the characters of both.
Yeah.
I think he needs to stop discussing the issues or the kind of the backbiting with the other coworkers and managers, because that doesn't get you anywhere. It just makes things worse.
Yeah. I thought this is really interesting. After Davis filed his complaint about Green, later he says that Green seemed to accept my criticisms in a thoughtful manner and assured me he will do what is necessary to succeed in his position. And right before that, he said that Green doesn't follow up when information is requested of him. He has a lack of enthusiasm. He has he finds plans illogical and unfeasible, and he has negativity. And so he pretty much says that he isn't really competent enough to actually make changes. And then, like, right after that, he's like, well, Thomas, he seemed to accept my criticisms and it seems like he's going to change. So to me, honestly, I think that Davis is petty enough to where he just kind of doesn't necessarily want to get Green fired. I think he's really just trying to posture and trying to scare him. I think that's kind of what I'm seeing and kind of what I'm picking up on. And I think that you're right. Green needs to stop making this an issue. Maybe he needs to stop talking about it so much behind Davis's back. And maybe he can't say sorry. Maybe I know that some people, especially guys, are not into, people coming and saying they're sorry. So maybe what he has to do is just let this die down and give it a little bit of time. And, the focus will change to other things. But if they let it fester and they both keep focusing on it, I think if you're Green and you just won't let it go, it could end your career. But this is just one issue. And I think he needs to take a different approach next time. Maybe talk to his boss personally next time instead of calling him out in front of everybody.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I think, the biggest point is to stop talking about it and address it with the person you have an issue with.
Yeah.
Because eventually it's all about, trust too. If you keep talking about it and keep bringing up the issues, one, it's never going to get resolved. And two, you're just setting yourself up for your supervisor not to trust you, in the workplace, because, okay, what are they going to say what is Green going to say if they have another disagreement or something? I think a lot of it just needs to be. I kind of just want to be like, all right, grow up. Like, don't talk about it in the workplace and like address it. Like necessarily, he doesn't necessarily need to apologize because he felt like what he was saying was what needed to be said. But just owning up that there is an issue and trying to fix it. That's gonna make the difference.
Yeah.
But I think David's ego got hurt really badly. I guess no one has done that before, and he will never forget what Green did to him. And then also he might even every single mistakes that Green makes, he's gonna set a. He's might just gonna go after him all over. So there should be like a resolution, and maybe, as you guys says, stop talking about what happened on that meeting, and continue on. And any differences that they have, they should discuss it, but separate from others.
Yeah.
Because they're gonna have a lot of disagreement regardless. It might be about sales. It might be about equipment, whatever is involved in the business. So this is just like the beginning of a relationship that didn't initially started well. And if they don't fix it, they both gonna be hurt by the situation. Because I bet that there will be somebody else higher up than them, and they both might get fired.
Yeah. So I wonder so much sometimes when these situations happen, if like somebody like Davis wasn't just having a really bad week when this happened. Maybe this isn't like a constant for Davis. Maybe you don't always have to agree with Davis, but maybe this was just the wrong week to point out that you thought he was wrong. Maybe something happened at home. You never know. And I think kind of like that scripture in Alma says, by small and simple means, great things are brought to pass. I think that sometimes you just have to, maybe take a coworker or a boss out to lunch, like what big of a difference would that make? Just being like, hey, let's go out to lunch. And maybe you talk about the problem, maybe you don't, but just let the person that's in conflict with you know that like you're still trying to maintain a good relationship with them. I think that's kind of a huge deal. And I think it's about all you can do. Unless there's an HR office you can talk to, but I don't know if they have that.
Yeah. I think one thing that kind of stood out to me as we've been talking is that this is a new position for Davis as well. He hasn't been in this position for very long because he was just promoted also. So he's still learning and growing in this position, trying to fill the previous person's shoes, growing pains, all that kind of thing as well. So
yeah,
it's kind of that factors in also.
Yeah, that's true. So how do we see this play out? I mean, I think we've talked a little bit about this, but in our own work lives, how do office politics come into play when it comes to our work situations, or even, I guess, school situations sometimes? I think I definitely see it with people at work. I had a summer job testing concrete, and there were a lot of ways we can make our tests go a lot faster. But I realized that none of the lab testing people wanted to make the tests go faster, because all that would happen was the boss would take all the credit for it. He'd make it sound like his own implementation, and then they'd have twice as much work to do. And so these lab technicians, they would test less, so they had more time, and they didn't want to give their boss kind of a promotion or a raise from getting more work done, just because it was just kind of this vicious cycle. And so the boss and the lab technicians didn't get along very well, and it was all because they wanted to just save time. It's interesting. I think you learn in economics that people do what gives them the most benefit for the least amount of cost, right? And so business structure, I think, is really important because you need to make sure that people are there for the right reasons and that they actually want to help out, and they're not going to take advantage of the system. Kind of like the reading we had. What was the name of that section of reading? It was shoot.
I can't think of what it was called.
But it talked about how people are selfish sometimes, you know, and they're very self-interested, and that's definitely true. And you see that a lot with people. And I think that the best way to combat that is just like Ammon in the scriptures did. And you just sometimes have to serve the people that are being kind of mean and kind of not very nice. And that's really the only thing I've noticed that really helps the situation. Because if you try to combat fire with fire, it just seems like everything burns down, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yes, sometimes you just have to just don't say anything if you have nothing nice to say, because especially if you're upset, you might say things that at the end you might gonna regret it. And I think when at the end of the story, when what's his name, Green, start thinking about what's going on, I think inside he was regretting some of the things that he did.
Mhm.
He mean it. It was because he wants to keep his job and then show good attitude and show that he knows what he's doing. It was personal against Davis.
Yeah. So what gospel connections do you guys see with this case study? Any gospel principles you see here?
I
Like,
think you made a good point about service, and you're not always going to agree with someone, but if you're willing to see past that and serve them anyways, or just see beyond yourself, then that can make a huge difference sometimes.
It also makes me think of the story of the woman that committed like adultery, and how it was like, oh, who's without sin, like cast the first stone. And I think it's about remembering, even because Davis is in that new management position, is that, remembering that we've been in that situation, or, we aren't perfect. And sometimes we have to look at the issues other people are having and say, okay, I've had something similar to this. Like, how can I help them? Instead of, casting that stone and just, looking down and saying, well, now I'm better than you kind of situation.
mhm. Yeah, I agree. I think sometimes the biggest stone you can cast at somebody to make them feel terrible is to be really nice to them after they're really mean. I honestly, that's honestly when I felt the worst about myself, is when I've noticed I've been mean to somebody and then they've been really nice to me. I'm like, oh no, I'm a terrible human being. So yeah, I think it's definitely important. I think that's what the gospel is kind of all about. Like, just take a look at Christ's life, right? He was persecuted his entire life and yet overcame it, and he didn't get upset with people. He served people, and I just think that's awesome. That's honestly one of the reasons why we're here, is so we can go through some of these tough times, and so we can teach people that there's a better way. And so a lot of times it's kind of an opportunity, and I think we need to view sometimes the struggle that people have and the conflict they have as an opportunity to show them that, it's like a teaching moment. We can show them that we can behave better and we can be more mature than that, and overcome our obstacles. So the rest of this case, it says, to share the rest of the story, after February 2008, that email from McDonald, Green took offense against his boss. He crafted a series of memorandums, emails, reports, and projections that exposed inaccuracies and creative forecast. The data enabled Green to build some alliances with other marketing personnel who used the data to ultimately side with him. On April 4th, it was announced that Frank Davis was being moved laterally to an undefined special project. However, Green's tactics were seen as an overly brutal method by many in the company, and although he won the battle against his boss and his career was irreparably harmed, McDonald distanced herself from him. By July of 2008, Green announced he was resigning from his position to pursue full-time studies for an MBA. We can only speculate what would have occurred if Green had tried to help Davis work out the discrepancies and problems with forecasts. Perhaps both would have succeeded. So I mean, it just goes to show he should have tried to work it out. Like how bad did he feel? He was trying to save his job, and he ended up getting Davis sent to a undefined special project, right? Like he pretty much got Davis fired.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, you might feel like you're gonna feel good when you win a fight like that, but I guarantee you he didn't, and that's why he left after just a little bit of time. So I don't know.
Well, and people don't respect you after winning a fight like that.
No.
Like that's almost just plain dirty, and it's like, okay, well, I don't want to work with someone like that because what if it happens to me? Like, just like McDonald just distanced himself from it, or distance herself from it, because, you know, if they fight dirty once, they're willing to do it again.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. Well, I guess it just goes to show that fighting dirty is not a good idea when it comes to the workforce, because we can end up harming ourselves and our coworkers and our reputation, and it's just not very Christ-like in the end. You know, got to do what's right and let the consequence follow. But yeah, if there's not any last comments, then
I think we went over it pretty darn well.
all right.
Yeah.
I guess we will adjourn. Thank you guys for your participation and your time. I'll post the link, and I'll email it to you guys as well. But
Sounds great.
thanks,
Okay. Thanks, Brad.
guys.
We'll see you next
later.
week.
Bye.
Okay.